And now we are moving straight on to our next keynote. So please welcome from Massachusetts General Hospital Research Institute and Harvard Medical School, Gabriela Apiu. Welcome to the stage. Now joining Gabriela remotely will be two others, her colleagues in this panel, or rather keynote. So Gabriela, I will hand over to you.
Thank you very much. So I will start by thanking the organizers, especially my long-term collaborator and colleague, Pierre Courteil, for this great opportunity, and to thank my great colleagues and collaborators joining us from Boston today, Dr. Bob Tepper and Dr. Tim Ferriss. I think it's a real privilege here to be here today and to have them on board. Both Tim and Bob have navigated in their extraordinary career different geographies, academia and industry and government. So their perspective and why to invest in breakthrough innovation, in medical innovation, will be amazing. So we'll be thrilled to share this with you. And I will ask them first to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about their journey, and about their perspective today. So it's a unique perspective, and I can't wait to hear this. So maybe Bob, if you want to start.
Great. And can you hear me okay, Gabriela?
Yeah, perfect.
Great. Well, hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Bob Tepper. I'm a physician scientist by training and spent the first third of my career in academic medicine at the Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston. Currently, I'm one of the founding partners of a firm called Third Rock Ventures, which is a biotechnology-focused venture capital firm based in Boston and in San Francisco. We started the firm almost 18 years ago now, at a time when there was really an explosion of science and new technologies that could be applied to human biology. And we thought that that would be a great time, despite the fact that there weren't any folks building new companies then, to really start a firm to build new companies from scratch, working with academic leaders and other members of the biotech and pharma community. So fast forward 18 years, we've started 68 companies over that period of time, and now have over 20 approvals, FDA-approved therapies on the market. Prior to Third Rock, I was president of R&D of a biotechnology company based in Boston called Millennium Pharmaceuticals, which was one of the early genomics-based biotechnology companies. And that company was acquired by Takeda Pharmaceuticals in 2008. And I hope today, along with Tim, we could convince you why investing in innovation is important, but also some of the pitfalls and challenges in doing so. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob. Tim?
Gabriela, thanks so much. And can you hear me?
Yes, very good, very well.
Okay, great. And I too, like Bob, am very honored to be invited to speak with you and to have this conversation. So I'm a primary care physician, spent 30 years at Mass General and Harvard, and my relationship with innovation was very much from the health economics side. I'm a health economist, and also from the management side, being one of the senior leaders at Mass General Hospital, responsible for purchasing and the deployment, supply chain issues associated with the increasing range of technologies available to physicians in the Boston area and worldwide. I guess the other part of my background that is important is I've always been interested in the role of technology in the delivery of care. So this is health information technology. So it's a different kind of an important complement as part of the package of innovation to the pharmaceutical and biotech innovation that has been occurring at the same time. Health and we'll get into it later, but the health information technology side of innovation, I would say, has produced fewer home runs lately compared to biotech, but actually the future in health information technology with LLMs and AI looks very bright in the near future, and I look forward to having that discussion. I think I'll just conclude by saying I spent the last 3 years as the National Director of Innovation at the National Health Service in England, and in that role I had a responsibility for all healthcare data in the NHS, all data policy, all health technology and technology procurement, but also actually biotechnology and pharmaceuticals and their purchase and deployment within the NHS. And I worked a lot with a lot of the big name biotech and pharmaceutical companies on the deployment of their novel innovations. And I just say, learned firsthand the tension between the great outcomes that biotech is producing for patients and the tension with the affordability and the infrastructure necessary to deploy those innovations. So I'll stop there and look forward to getting into the conversation with you, Gabriella, Bob, and the audience.
Thank you, Tim. So great. Thank you both. So we will now move to the challenges and the rewards, the core of our panel discussion today. And as you have heard from both Bob and Tim, we will look to diagnostics, to therapeutics, and to health information technology. So challenges and rewards. So Bob, do you want to start?
Sure. So as we mentioned, there really is an explosion of technologies and science that can be applied not only to the understanding of human disease now, and you're aware of many of these technologies, but also there have been new therapeutic modalities that can be developed on the basis of these new technologies. And you know many of them, but just for the sake of summarizing, we now have types of drugs that we've never had before over the last 20 years. For example, drugs based on RNA. So RNA vaccines, we're all aware of the importance of RNA vaccines given the recent pandemic and how quickly those drugs could be made and how they could be evolved. Small inhibitory RNAs that have created medications for both rare diseases and common diseases like high cholesterol treatments. And some of these modalities, such as siRNAs, can require as few as 2 injections a year. So really a very marked change in the types of drugs we're seeing. Gene therapy, cell therapies, multi-specific antibodies, engineered proteins and peptides, all of these are now part of the innovation that we see in drug discovery. So that's terrific, but you also have to appreciate that where innovation occurs now is broadly distributed compared to the past. In the past, small molecule drugs were for the most part created at the large pharmaceutical companies. And the large biotech companies that developed in the late 70s and in the 80s and early 90s really were the ones that were developing most, if not all, of the protein therapeutics and the early antibody therapeutics. However, small biotech now, especially with the fact that all the capabilities do not have to be built on site, given the concomitant explosion of contract research organizations that can do a lot of the scientific work, drug discovery now can occur across thousands and thousands of different entities across the globe. So if you're an acquirer of discovered therapeutics in order to do later stage development, such as the larger pharmaceutical companies and biotech companies, you're not only looking internally, but you're mostly looking externally. So far greater than 80 to 85% of the drugs that are eventually marketed by the large pharmaceutical and biotechnology companies have been developed elsewhere. And in fact, we're now seeing drugs being developed even further along than in the past in academic centers. So if you're an acquirer of innovation, if you will, on the therapeutic side, you have to have organizations that can look outwardly and very broadly, literally across the globe. And therefore, this requires a whole new effort, which is not necessarily making the drugs themselves, but really looking to see where the most opportunities are. And again, it means that academia, biotech, and large pharma are now all part of an ecosystem that must cooperate in order to really continue to innovate. And therefore, that collaboration, that cooperation needs to be an essential part of how we're thinking about drug discovery and drug development in the future.
Thank you, Bob. Tim?
Well, thank you. And Bob, that was a great setup for discussing what I would call the other side of the innovation pipeline, related more to health information technology. And here too, of course, the revolution in biology and the speed of advances has matched in the information technology space. And so looking out over what is possible, and while not ubiquitous, maybe very common, is the fact that, for example, now many people around the globe can access their health records on their phone. This is no longer novel. It is, although, as I said, it's not fully rolled out, but it is getting there very quickly. And I just think about that compared to the paper records and the difficulty of getting access to information. We're in a completely different place worldwide. A great example of the importance of that is what we all saw during the pandemic. And literally around the world, there was information available what was happening that day and that week in your local area due to the aggregation of data. And most countries were reporting this on a daily basis, changes in attack rates, viral loads, all kinds of epidemiologic indicators. This was only possible because of the digitization of health information. So in addition to the personal aspects of healthcare delivery, the epidemiology and the advances in understanding health changes in health trajectory across populations, it has also been dramatically helpful in doing research. So getting closer to what Bob was talking about, the ability to interrogate information systems for the phenotypic data that is coded in records, coded or unstructured, either way. That this has also been a big accelerant to the biotechnology, both on the discovery side and the development of therapeutics. Having said all that, those are on the, I guess, Gabrielle, I would say those are in the rewards category. There are definitely still challenges. So most importantly, in the structuring of and the digitization of healthcare data has slowed down the delivery of healthcare. So the documentation requirements of digitizing information at the front line, the burden on nurses, doctors, and even patients of structuring information has really slowed down the delivery of healthcare, and so the benefit of the digitization has occurred, as I said, in access to information, has occurred in epidemiology, has occurred in research, but it has not occurred in the delivery system. The delivery system is actually slowed down largely because of health information technology. But I do see that trend reversing quite quickly in the next decade as, and we'll talk about this, Gabriella, but large language models, AI, have already made a big impact on the delivery of healthcare. And I think we're going to see a lot more quite rapidly in the next several years in facilitating a delivery system that has been built mostly on a one-to-one, so one input to one output. What we're seeing and what we need to have in the delivery of healthcare is the one-to-many. So we will see many outputs from one a singular input. That is starting to happen, but the pace with which that is happening is going to accelerate dramatically in the next several years. So let me stop there, Gabriella, and look forward to the follow-on questions.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. So I would like to now look to you all in the audience and maybe take we have a few minutes before moving to the last part of our discussion. If you'd have questions for Bob and Tim here as it stands now. Any questions? No, sounds all familiar, clear. Yeah, okay. So if you have a microphone would be great. And maybe you introduce yourself so that we know. Thank you.
Hello, first of all, thank you for this wonderful presentation. It was amazing. My name is Radu Vodanic. I'm a physician at Bristol Myers Squibb. My question is about the models that you described previously. And what about the extent of the validation of these models? Because we know that most of the actual algorithms have a lot of lack of transparency, let's say. And what about the decisions they take in will be obliged to take care or is just consultative? So who will have the final decision at the end?
Tim, I think this is for you.
Thank you.
Okay, who will have the final decision on, I'm sorry, I missed the specific.
For example, for a certain type of treatment or diagnostic, if the machine says something and the physician say anything else, who will own the final decision?
Yeah. Well, let me, possibly the best analogy here is with automated cars, so self-driving cars. And I think in healthcare, there are two kinds of AI-based decisions. One is those decisions that are constrained by a discrete outcome that you can train a model on, and the model becomes approved because you know discretely that it does as good or better job. And I will just say, for example, Bechdel Dickinson's cell counting machines have been using AI algorithms for over a decade, and it's all regulated and fairly easy to measure. That is not the controversial part of AI. The controversial part comes with generative AI and the large language models, where you're applying Bayesian approaches to a decision that it has traditionally been a decision by a clinician, made by a clinician. I think we will go through a transition phase where generative AI will provide suggestions, but the decision will be made by a clinician. So we will have hands on the wheel, if I go back to that analogy, for quite a long time. What this will mean is, the vernacular here is decision support. So clinical decision support. So how that is provided to clinicians and certainly in the future to patients will require apparatus. And I refer to actually a paper that was just published by David Blumenthal and a senior executive at Google about how generative AI models will be regulated. And they'll be regulated the same way human intelligence is regulated, which is through a licensing type approach rather than a regulatory clearance approach used by such bodies in the EU, England, and the FDA, for example, in the US. So I think key distinction between discrete outcomes and open outcomes. And then I think I'm not particularly worried about the models making decisions. I don't see that happening for quite a long time. But the models will generate suggestions, and that will be, that's in the very near future.
Thank you, Tim. One more question? No. Okay, so then we will go to the last part of our discussion. And Bob, I will turn it over to you. So what I would like is to hear about these appropriate bridges. So for many, many years with Bob and also having Tim on board, we try to teach and also to our faculty the bridges, how to bridge their discoveries to a technology transfer office, to a biotech or launch a biotech, to their colleagues in large pharma. So not only practicing, but also teaching this. And I would like you to speak about that. This is one item. And then I would say, in conclusion, and then I will go back to you, Tim, to conclude the panel also. What are your criteria of success? How do you know a medical innovation will make it? And what keeps you inspired and going despite all the challenges in pushing this forward?
Great. So I can start with the bridging program and why we believed it was so important to actually educate academic leaders and their industry colleagues about what each other does, if you will, and how can they get together. And it's based on what I said before. When the large pharmaceutical companies really discovered and developed their own drugs, when the large biotechnology companies then contributed discovering and developing their own biotherapeutics, things were relatively simple. They would look through the academic literature, or they would interact with academic colleagues and maybe take a license on some early research and continue to develop the research in the actual industry setting. And those connections still occurred, but they were really simple, if you will. They were based on exchange of information. However, now with the new modalities, we know that academic leaders can actually build some of the compounds that could be close to being a drug or a cell therapy, as we said, or an RNA-based therapy. So they may have the knowledge on how to put the building blocks together, but do they have the knowledge of the discovery process and all the quality controls that need to be built into that? Do they understand the regulatory environment? And can they, in an efficient way, transfer to a partner, a larger partner, an entity that can be developed? So in order to not burn a lot of dollars that are very precious in the ecosystem, if you will, we need to cross-train individuals to understand actually how to proceed down the discovery of drugs and the development of drugs. And this was really something that Gabriella thought of quite a while back, given her background in industry and academia. But for the last almost 7 years, we've piloted and now have developed an education program at the Mass General, which now includes neighboring institutions, some of the other Harvard institutions, where we bring faculty members together to teach them about drug discovery and development. And the faculty consists of academic leaders who are interested in innovation, as well as industry leaders from the biotechnology and the pharmaceutical communities. And we're fortunate in the Boston area to have a very rich supply of leaders, both in academia and in the biopharmaceutical industries. And throughout a half a year, we actually teach them the process of drug discovery and development through case studies mostly. And that also includes understanding about licensing, the regulatory environment, clinical development strategies, and importantly, what finances does it take to actually move an early stage idea forward. And the goal of all this is to foster collaboration amongst people who are part of this now drug discovery and development continuum. We've had a lot of interest in the program. We've trained, Gabriella knows the exact number, probably close to 150 physician scientists or bench scientists or clinicians in this process. And our goal is a long-term one, to really populate the community with people who really understand the process so they can cooperate and collaborate and hopefully be able to develop innovative new therapeutics, diagnostics, and medical devices in an efficient way, in a cost-efficient way, and one with knowledge of what it takes rather than attempts at discovery which don't go as far as one would like.
Thank you, Bob. So Tim, who is teaching the wet blanket in this course, the financial perspective, it's always a wow surprise. So maybe a few thoughts on these bridges and the conclusion for you, how you see this medical innovation, despite the challenges, but moving forward.
Yeah. So thank you, Gabriella, and it's important. I think working with the class has been both a revelation for me and hopefully for the students about the importance of understanding that there are the amount of funding available for healthcare has limits, and yet the growth of biologic innovations is dramatically exceeding the GDP growth of most countries. That makes the funding of not the research side of this, but the actual delivery, increasingly challenging. And what I've put forward and engage in discussions with the students about is, what are we doing on the delivery side to lower the unit cost of care so that there is room for all this wonderful new technology to be delivered to our patients. And that means fundamentally changing the way we deliver healthcare, as I said before, from a more of a one-to-one model to a one-to-many model. Digital therapeutics is one great example. There's now quite a lot of mental health care delivered through digital therapeutics. That is going to continue. There's a huge need around, a huge unmet need around mental health care, but it extends well beyond the opportunities of delivering digital therapeutics, for example, over a person's phone, to the delivery of care, even in complex situations like the hospital. So this is what Gabriella knows that I refer to as type 3 innovation, which is innovation that is actually lowering the cost of care so that there's room to add in the new innovations at the top without creating so much stress on the people who fund, mostly the taxpayer, the delivery of all these innovations. So a very complex ecosystem with several moving parts, but health information technology and innovation in health information technology is a critical of this innovation ecosystem.
Thank you. We are at the end of our discussion, so thank you so much, Bob and Tim. As you can imagine, complex, but great discussions happening, and we hope relevant for the topic of our panel. Thank you both, and thank you for attending.